As promised, here is some additional practice for how you can add additional grammatical features to a two-word sentence that has a noun and a verb. So let's say this is your sentence, champions rise. And you've been challenged to add these 7 grammatical features. We're going to go through them one at a time, starting with a determiner. Now, determiners go before a noun. Remember from Jabberwocky, that's one of the cues or clues that we have a noun. And here's a long list of determiners. A lot of our determiners are also pronouns, including demonstrative pronouns. So if I ask you to add a determiner to a two-word sentence, the is probably a good choice. Some. If you want to kill 2 grammatical features with one word, you could choose a demonstrative pronoun. And then very clearly on the exam label for me, this is both a determiner and a demonstrative pronoun. I know what I'm talking about. Let's look at some examples. I might say the champions rise. I could say some champions rise or those champions rise. And in this third case, those is functioning both as a determiner and a demonstrative pronoun. So that satisfies number 1 on my list. What's number 2? An adverbial prepositional phrase. So to review, an adverbial prepositional phrase modifies a verb. It tells me when, where, or how this action is happening. Here are some examples. Something stopped. When did it stop? At the stroke of midnight. A little boy is hiding. Where does he hide? In the bedroom. The attorney is continuing. How is he continuing? Where? When? He's continuing with the trial. What does this do to our sentence? From the ashes, the champions rise. Some champions rise when? In the morning. Both of these are examples of adverbial prepositional phrases. Because they are adverbial, they're movable. That is the defining feature of an adverb or an adverbial. So I can put my adverbial prepositional phrase at the beginning of the sentence. I can put it at the end of the sentence. What's next on the list? I need an adjectival prepositional phrase. So your adjectival tells which one regarding the noun. Now you may notice here, these are the exact same prepositional phrases I used as examples of adverbials. Now they are functioning as adjectives. Why? Because they're modifying something different. They're no longer modifying a verb, they're modifying a noun. Which deadline? The deadline at the stroke of midnight. Which paintings? Some paintings in the bedroom. Which lawyer? That lawyer with the trial and the thing. A prepositional phrase often can play a dual role as adverbial or adjectival depending on where you put it in the sentence. Is it modifying the action and telling when, where, or how? Or is it modifying the noun and telling me which one? So in my sample sentence, I only have one noun right now, champions. So which champions? From the ashes, the champions of the people rise. Or maybe I just want to say some champions, which champions in track and field rise in the morning. So far, I have done 3 out of the 7 on my list. Up next, the auxiliary verb. Now, auxiliary verbs modify a main verb. They're your helping verbs. Is, was, were, has, have, had, do, and then you have your modal auxiliaries that shift the meaning of the verb just slightly, like may, might, could, should. If you're simply asked to provide an auxiliary verb, you get to choose anything from this list. So choose your favorites. Pick 2, so you've got 2 in your arsenal. They should work with pretty much any sentence. Let's look at our sample sentences. From the ashes, the champions of the people must rise. Some champions in track and field can rise in the morning. I've added an auxiliary to both of these sentences, and they're starting to sound a lot fancier and a lot more impressive. I still have 3 grammatical features to go. Now I need to do my demonstrative pronoun. I may have already done it with my determiner, but if I didn't, I have to add it now. Demonstrative pronouns, pretty short list. This, that, these, those. For the purposes of this sentence expansion, you can put the demonstrative pronoun directly on the original noun. You can put it in your prepositional phrase. You can add something, another phrase entirely to the sentence to get the demonstrative pronoun in there. Whatever works for you. Here's an example. I took out the in my prepositional phrase and changed it to these. From these ashes, the champions of the people must rise. This works. I could have said, from the ashes, these champions of the people must rise. So that's what you do with a demonstrative pronoun. Next, we have the particle. Particles are that special brand of preposition that you can add on after a verb and shift the meaning slightly to form a phrasal verb. In, out, up, down, on, off. You can put something in, you can put up, you can put on some clothes, you can put off your work, you can put down a friend, you can put out you know what. All of these have slightly different meanings working off of the original verb put. So what about my sample sentence? My champions are going to rise up. Wouldn't make much sense if they rose down. Then maybe they rise out. Your sentence might not make the most sense in the world after you have added all these features. It would be awesome if it does. I understand if it doesn't. When you add a particle, you need to find your verb, and then you need to slap in, out, up, down after it. Pretty simple. Last but not least, I need to add a qualifier. Now, qualifiers modify an adverb or an adjective. Here's a short list. Very, rather, quite, to, somewhat. In class, I recommended that you keep very and somewhat in your head as sort of all-purpose qualifiers. And also, as we mentioned in class, our original sentence doesn't have any adjectives or adverbs in it. So I'm going to have to add not only a qualifier, but also an adjective or an adverb. In this example, I've decided that my champions must rise up very triumphantly. So very is my qualifier, and it is qualifying the adverb triumphantly. I could have put my qualifier in a lot of places. I could have said, from these very cold ashes. From these ashes, the very brave champions. The champions of the very tired people. There are a lot of places you can qualify. So, one more example for practice. Say this is my original two-word sentence. People suck. And then what you see below is my revision. What have I added to the sentence? Can you name, label, identify it? So go ahead and pause the video for a little bit while you work through this. And then go ahead and restart it, and you'll see the explanation. I'm not kidding, you should pause it. Because how are you going to learn unless you actually try to work this out on your own? So I added a determiner, the people. Which people, which ones? The people in those jobs. And I put my demonstrative pronoun inside my adjectival prepositional phrase. Then I added an auxiliary. The people in those jobs do suck. And they don't just suck, they suck up. What a perfect particle. My adverbial prepositional phrase, how do they suck up? They suck up to their bosses. Now I need a qualifier. Somewhat, and my adverb, regularly. So from people suck, I go to the people in those jobs do suck up to their bosses somewhat regularly. You would think adding all of this stuff, I would have a much longer, much more awkward sounding sentence. I don't. We use all of these little grammatical features quite often without thinking about it. What I'm asking you to do for this part of test 1 is to think about it. If you have any questions, please let me know before Wednesday. And happy studying.